Well, good evening, group. I want to travel back in time to year 1997, 1998. I had many conversations with a very well-versed member of our group, and he continued to enlighten me that the secret to controlling aging lies in our bone marrow. That as our bone marrow ages, we age systemically. And if we can do anything to reverse the aging process of our bone marrow, that's where our stem cells are produced, our immune cells, all of our blood cells actually in the bone marrow, if we can do something to reverse that, then we're going to be able to dramatically slow and or reverse aging. That was 1997, 1998. The question we both asked each other is, what do we do about it? How do we make that happen? And the good news is there are some ways to potentially make that happen. As we move towards the very aggressive types of interventions designed to reverse aging, let's not forget the basics. The basics involving hypertension, lipids, glucose, triglycerides, homocysteine, the ways that we can improve our health that everyone agrees on. We don't want to forget that foundation so that we can then build on that foundation to the second level. What we're going to talk about is bone marrow health, something that is a challenge at this point, but a fascinating study came out just last week, published around February 20th, in which they took bone marrow from young mice and transplanted that bone marrow into older mice. And the result that they were able to measure definitively was a significant improvement in neurological function. They could memorize better, learn better. There was an improvement in their brain's capacity to function. And these were old mice transplanted with young bone marrow. Now, this was not surprising to us because we've been studying this for a long time. In fact, in 2014, we launched a fundraising campaign to see if we couldn't do a study. It was going to cost about $10 million, and we've not raised the money, by the way, to see if we could mobilize the bone marrow of very young people and put the stem cell mobilized plasma into older individuals. We are still trying to raise funding for that particular study. But to give you an example as to how well this particular research project worked, you look at these four diagrams of the microglia brain cells. The cell there to the far left is a healthy, young microglia cell. And you notice it has branches extending from it. Those are synaptic connections that enable that microglia cell to communicate with other cells. And how our brain works, by the way, is like a parallel processing computer, where you have perhaps very slow microchips all linked together in such a way that they communicate so effectively that that computer operates very fast, which is how young people think. They think fast, they learn easily, they memorize readily. But with aging, and that's the second microglia cell, you can see those branches have shriveled, meaning that the cell may maintain some functionality, but it's no longer connected to the rest of the brain the way it was. And then the third slide over, that was an old mouse given old bone marrow transplants. Bone marrow from an old mouse transplanted into an old mouse. That was essentially the placebo. It shriveled. Those synaptic connections, they just continued to shrink, meaning that old bone marrow is probably toxic. We have a lot of evidence. But the spectacular slide to the far right of that screen, those were old mice with young bone marrow transplanted into their bodies. And look at how those connections sprouted. Essentially, that old microglia cell in the brain resembles, maybe even exceeds, a young microglial cell. This is hardcore evidence, and that's the only cell they were able to really electron microscope, but they were able to validate that in response to those branches regrowing from the microglia, these mice were thinking and performing as younger mice. So that conversation I had over 20 years ago, it had a lot of significance, especially when I saw this type of study coming out just last week in the published literature. In fact, most of what I'm going to talk about is what's happened over the last 30 days. That's how fast the science is evolving. Now, heart failure affects about 8 million Americans. Some of the statistics say 5 million. The real number is 8 million, and it's going to increase. It occurs when our heart muscle loses the ability to pump and oxygenate our whole body with sufficient quantities of blood. And most people with heart failure, they die relatively soon. Well, the interesting factor about heart failure is depending on where you live determines how long you survive with congestive heart failure. Now, if you look at this map, South Florida is one of the healthiest places to have heart failure. You're less likely to die in South Florida than you are in Mississippi, Louisiana, North Texas, Oklahoma. Those dark red spots are the highest death rates from heart failure. Now, does it have something to do with the climate? I don't think so. No. It has something to do with the quality of medical practice and the lifestyle practices that these people engage in. Think of people in Mississippi, Louisiana, North Texas, Oklahoma, the tobacco use, the obesity, the horrific diets that they engage in, the lack of exercise. These are areas of the country where people are not taking care of themselves. So when they're diagnosed with heart failure, they accelerate the rate at which they're going to die. Whereas people in the Los Angeles area of California, New York City, South Florida, they have a greater understanding of what they should be doing to take care of their own health, and they also have better access to cardiologists who know how to treat heart failure better. Now, this is data that I presented before. It is remarkable. Starting in 1995, not that long ago, and going to 2014, a 44% decline in sudden death rates in heart failure patients. That's a marked improvement over just 19 years. Now, some of that technology is conventional medicine. This is what enlightened cardiologists are prescribing to heart failure patients. It's a cocktail of medications that improves survival rather dramatically. And if you ignore this type of technology, even if you take a lot of nutrients and do a lot of other good interventions, you'll probably die sooner. So we advocate that people with certain disorders follow conventional guidelines and then move into alternative medicine to derive the benefits of both. And I have people who approach me with heart failure and they say, I've never taken a drug in my life, I don't want to start. And I say, guess what? If you want to live, you're probably going to start on 4 or 5 different drugs, and you're going to take them all during the course of the day, and you're going to start on some nutrients. We're going to replace your hormones. You're going to change your diet, because that's how we can enable you to live a lot longer. This is technology in action, resulting in 44% fewer people dying of heart failure over a 19-year period. It's rather dramatic. Now, the new intervention that's just recently been discovered is that senolytics may be an effective way to additionally treat heart failure. And for those who are just here and don't know senolytics, this is a slide I've used before. A senolytic compound selectively destroys senescent cells. These are sometimes referred to in the media as zombie cells. You wish they would just die. Instead, they linger. And they're highly metabolically active in a way that they destroy the existing cells so that those cells become senescent cells until you don't live any longer. What senescent cells do is they impede organ function. And hey, your heart is one of those organs that senescent cells impede. They create systemic inflammatory reactions 24/7. Senescent cells ignite inflammation throughout your body. And the scariest thing about what senescent cells do is they emit protein-degrading enzymes. They're called metalloproteinases, and they degrade protein. Healthy cells in the area of a senescent cell become injured, damaged, and senescent themselves. So if you wonder why a senolytic drug or a senolytic compound might be an effective treatment for heart failure, think about the senescent cells in an old heart. And they're emitting these enzymes, killing additional cardiocytes, and all of a sudden, at some point, your heart just doesn't work anymore. You die. Well, earlier this month, results from a study came out showing that using senolytics to remove senescent cells restored cardiac health in a mouse model of congestive heart failure. This is another medical breakthrough that's occurring more and more now on a weekly or daily basis. I'm getting emails about new studies confirming or enlightening us to what we can do to protect ourselves against degenerative disorders. And the media, they pick up on that. They talk about people at Mayo and other research institutes who are collaborating to show how removing senescent cells may be a way to systemically reverse aging and treat specific age-related disorders like congestive heart failure. So we're seeing the media pick up quite a bit, and this is a chart from that study showing how the cycles work, where the cells emit certain toxic factors, where if you block the senescent cells by killing them, you're going to effectively treat congestive heart failure. So what we learned from this study published earlier this month is that in addition to all the other disorders that we know are associated with the accumulating senescent cell burden, congestive heart failure is another disorder in which we can potentially treat by removing the senescent cells from the heart and the rest of the body. And again, 8 million people in this country suffering, an urgent need for a clinical trial to be done using the proven senolytic compounds that we've described before, and I'm going to reiterate what those are during this presentation. And by the way, this research all started only back in around 2015. About 4 years ago, Mayo Clinic published a study showing that when they removed senescent cells from old mice, all of these benefits occurred. And if you look at number 3, they noticed improved cardiac function. So the fact that they did a study using senolytics specifically to treat heart failure in a mouse model shouldn't surprise us, because it worked in 2015 to induce systemic rejuvenation. And JAMA, September 17th, 2018, reported on this research. They described it as something that may transform medical practice, where if you are a person over age 40 or 50 and you go to see a doctor, he may prescribe a senolytic drug cocktail as a way to at least alleviate whatever chronic condition you have. And again, reporting last month during our last presentation, we talked about pulmonary fibrosis, kind of a disorder that you would think senescent cell removal would be highly effective for. And they did just a pilot study, and they were able to show that dasatinib and quercetin improved physical function. It wasn't a cure, but that was just the initial phase 1 study. They're moving more into the phase 2 arena now to see how efficacious they can make senescent cell removal treat pulmonary fibrosis, a lethal condition that normally kills people in just a few years. They literally are not able to breathe. And at RADFest, September 21st, I presented the first findings ever in medical history of a human clinical trial where we used dasatinib and quercetin to treat people with severe bone-on-bone osteoarthritis. 90% had significant improvement, almost complete relief of pain, improved joint mobility, and we're just waiting right now for the follow-up MRIs to be read and interpreted in a way to see if cartilage regeneration occurred. It is spectacular what we're consistently seeing in clinical trials. That means trials on humans that emulate what's successfully done in the animal models. So this is the senolytic dose schedule that was used in the osteoarthritis study. It differs a little bit from the Mayo Clinic study on pulmonary fibrosis, and I think what we're using is a little bit safer. And what I'm going to tell you in the next couple minutes is how you may be able to gain access finally to affordable dasatinib. That's been a real handicap. It's such an expensive drug because it's used to treat cancer, and because insurance covers it, the drug companies mark it up way, way too much. And this is the difference in dosing between the Mayo Clinic study on pulmonary fibrosis and the osteoarthritis clinical trial that we helped fund. They basically used a lot more quercetin in our osteoarthritis trial, and we actually used a lower dosing schedule of dasatinib, even though it looks like it's higher. Now, this is a slide that I've shown now probably to 10 different groups that you can get dasatinib under a brand name called Sprycel. It is a drug used to treat leukemia. Leukemia patients take it every day, and of course they have side effects by taking it every day. But a low dose of dasatinib has not demonstrated toxicity in the clinical trials that we have been involved in. Problem is, 4 tablets may cost you over $2,000. And you may want to do this more than once a year. So the challenge has been finding a lower cost source. Now, I was just informed tonight that a compounding pharmacist, who's not just a pharmacist, he's a PharmD. He's got about as much education as a medical doctor, but he chose pharmacy to get his doctor's degree. His name is Alan Zimmer. He's standing or sitting right in the front seat. Alan, just get up to let people know you're here. He has vowed to identify, and we're going to independently validate, sources of dasatinib that he will compound on an individual basis with a doctor's prescription, of course, compound the individual dose of dasatinib that you need to achieve the similar benefits that we were able to validate in our osteoarthritis study, and what a lot of enlightened immortalists are doing right now. They're self-experimenting with dasatinib without any problems. And by the way, we're calling all around the country to encourage the pharmacist to compound this, because it's different than the Sprycel drug. The dasatinib for age reversal is individually dosed based on your body weight, so it should be compounded. You shouldn't try to use a different dose that's made available through pharmacies. And a study that we reported on last month, this is the company backed by Jeff Bezos and other very wealthy people. They are identifying other senolytic compounds that are demonstrating safety and a degree of efficacy in very initial studies. I predict in the next 3 or 4 years there'll be many, many senolytic compounds out there. But in the meantime, you need to take advantage of what's available right now. Now, this is a brand of dasatinib that has been imported from other countries by a number of people, and they've used it, no side effects whatsoever, but we wanted to independently assay it to assure that it had the proper amount of dasatinib in it to induce a meaningful benefit. And we put it through an extensive test. We tested it against Sprycel. We tested it against Sigma-derived dasatinib, where it's a very high-quality research grade, and the drug came out to be perfect. This low-cost drug available from other countries, identical to the Sprycel that in this country costs an absolute fortune. Now, one of our members, John, you can stand up if you'd like. He has made some connections with some people overseas, in Canada, other kind of pharmacies, and if you have a prescription, he can help you obtain it. And what we've encouraged some people to do is maybe work with John, all get together and pitch in and buy a couple bottles of dasatinib, because you don't need that many tablets. Each person may only need 4 to 6 tablets, and this bottle contains 60 of them, I think. So you could potentially have 9 or 10 people chip in, and your cost is very, very low. So the idea of being able to take advantage of senolytic therapy, it's now becoming real. Now, the people who want to live forever, like me, they're working with others to put together big money to do large human studies. We can't wait for it to happen. This was announced earlier this month. Peter Diamandis, he's an incredibly brilliant researcher, businessman. He gives talks on immortality all the time, goes around the world telling people you don't have to die. Technology is advancing fast enough that if you take care of yourself now, you may live forever. And he's putting together a $100 million longevity vision fund to support research. And these are the people he's partnered with. The younger guy, Sergey Young, the younger one, is going to do most of the work. Jim Mellon is a billionaire. He travels the world encouraging people to invest money in age reversal research. He convinces a lot of people that this is probably the most significant way of growing your money, because I think when age reversal research develops into clinical therapies, it will be bigger than Apple, bigger. The people will need more of it. It'll be universal. People will not want to let aging take its course. Some of you may know Alex Zavornikov. This is a very interesting individual who's pioneered a form of deep learning artificial intelligence where he's able to identify probable compounds and combination of compounds that can slow and reverse aging. And he got a nice write-up in Forbes magazine this month. Alex, by the way, does not have a home or an apartment. He never stops traveling to scientific conferences, to meet with groups of scientists, to put together research projects aimed at defeating the aging process. We've had a long-term relationship with Alex. He's somebody, when you hear him talk and you see what he's doing, you realize there are some very smart people. And he's sacrificing his own health for this. His biological age is 4 to 5 years older than his chronological age. And it's because of the stress he puts on himself to accelerate human age reversal research. And this is the diagram that was in Forbes magazine, and what it shows is what happens to people when they're born and they mature, and then around the age of 35 to 40 they start to decline. Now if you do nothing about it, you decline rather quickly. You fall ill, you might be in a nursing home for a couple years, and then a cemetery. But if you engage in some preventative type measures like Brian Delaney talked about, like some of the interventions we've spoken about for many, many years, well, you can delay that. You can live longer by intervening in aging today. And then the ultimate objective is to not let the downhill curve occur at all. In other words, diagnose and repair damage that occurs during aging so that you never have to think about nursing homes and cemeteries. It'll be a fantastic future. So Forbes, they wrote some very nice verbiage about age reversal research being the ultimate form of altruism, the ultimate charitable act, because it benefits everybody, including yourself. If we don't die of something, aging will kill us, and virtually everything we die of today is a degenerative disorder related to normal biological aging. And this is the last slide deck I'm going to really show. You look at the headline of this, and it pretty much acknowledges that science will emerge to enable people to live maybe forever. And then they have in that headline that immortality is a fate worse than death. Now, you can see what they write in there. They're talking about the scientists, the billionaires putting money into this and getting real-world results. They're talking about that, and I kept reading this whole article. I said, well, where is the downside to this? I couldn't figure out what they were getting at, because they're talking about the most brilliant entrepreneurs in the world putting big money into research designed to find a cure for biological aging. So I'm reading all this good stuff, and I'm saying, why is that headline there? Why are they calling immortality a fate worse than death? And again, the data they kept presenting and writing about in this article indicates this is going to happen. I mean, these people made the impossible occur already, and they're looking at aging as just another technological challenge. So this, I believe, is the only verbiage in this entire long article that talks about why this is so terrible. Well, number one, it's going to be too expensive. Everything is too expensive when it first comes out. We know that. We remember buying cell phones for $2,000 that barely had a connection anywhere and didn't work too well. $2,000 is what they cost back in 1988. We now buy smartphones for $600, $700 that do so much more. As technology advances, prices come down. This will not only be for billionaires, though in the beginning there'll probably be some interventions that the billionaires can afford that others can't. And then they bring up the ridiculous notion that somehow there's going to be too many people on this planet. Now, we've had so many credentialed speakers totally invalidate that assumption with one slide after another. I'm really just going to show you one, and that is Japan, Germany, France, and even China. They are losing their population, and that population shrinkage is going to hinder those countries. And that would be happening in the United States also if it wasn't for all the immigration. We are also not replacing ourselves as Americans as fast as we need to, but we don't have to worry about it. We've got plenty of new people coming in. But people don't move to China or Russia like they do to this country. Russia is another country, by the way, where their population is shrinking to the point in the next 50 to 100 years, there may not be many Russians around. That's how fast it's happening. So when some person's writing an article and has got this preposterous assumption that we're going to run out of room on this planet, the fact of the matter is we need more people. We need more mature people who've got the experience to make real-world differences occur in this world. And again, this is the demographic forecast for Japan. It is pathetic. They are going to be stuck with a lot of old people. Japan, by the way, is a country with the longest living people in the world, so they're going to have lots of old people and not enough young ones to support them. They've got a real problem. They would like to make those old people young and productive again. That would resolve their problem. So again, the breakthrough of the month, so to speak, is transplanting young bone marrow into old mice. And theoretically, some of us could do that now. You can remove bone marrow from a young, healthy person. It does grow back in a young, healthy person. Put it into your own body. And that young bone marrow would churn out a lot of healthy cells. Theoretically, we don't know the safety of it yet. I don't advise anyone doing it yet, but at least it provides evidence that aging is very much involved with bone marrow degeneration. And there are other ways to derive the benefits of young bone marrow that we are investigating. And this was all predicted by many, many people, and it's evidenced by what you're looking at right now. Most of us are old enough to remember a lot of people who dropped dead of a heart attack. And yet, starting in 1980, technologies and healthier living patterns resulted in a 50% overall decrease in deaths from any form of heart disease. A 50% reduction over this period of time in which people started thinking, if I do something to prevent a heart attack, maybe I won't have one. And guess what? It worked. So Ben Franklin predicted all this was going to happen. He predicted that technology would advance to the point where what was killing people in his era, and people in his era lived to an average age of 35 years. Now that is a little bit misleading because the infant mortality rate very high, and the maternal mortality rate, delivering a baby, a lot of women died. So it didn't mean that most people died at 35, but what it meant is people weren't living very long. And by 1900, that average only went up to about 47 years. Average lifespan. So Ben Franklin is predicting way back in the late 1700s that technology is going to enable people to live a lot longer, diseases be cured. Well, most of the diseases that Franklin knew about, they've been cured already. Antibiotics get rid of all those bacterial infections, tuberculosis, diphtheria, pneumonia, diarrhea even caused by various microbes. Those have been eliminated for the most part, and antiviral therapies have moved ahead with vaccines in which people don't die of smallpox anymore. So what he predicted is that science will emerge to eventually cure all of the diseases of aging, including the aging process himself. And we're seeing that happen right before our eyes. And I just want to introduce one more individual, Dr. Rich Gaines, if you'd like to stand up. Dr. Gaines is a medical doctor, practices in Boca Raton, and he had a grand opening for his clinic about 3 weeks ago, and I attended it to show support. He is going to enable people to gain access to affordable NAD infusions, Senolytics, certainly metformin, which is a basic we should all be involved in, and then more advanced biologics that we're exploring. And the work that Tanya did, and with Dr. Gaines' network of people that he's been involved in, we had about 200 people show up for this grand opening, including the local CBS affiliate for Palm Beach County. And they interviewed me and a number of other people, and I made it clear this may be the first age reversal medical clinic in history. And what I'm hoping is, in addition to what Dr. Gaines is doing in Boca, that more and more doctors add age reversal to the services that they offer, so you can have doctors convenient to you in your neighborhood. But Dr. Gaines will be around if you want to talk to him. You've got Alan Zimmer right here, the pharmacist who's going to compound some of these drugs at very low prices. And John, he's going to help you get some of these medications offshore in case you don't want to pay the prices in this country. We're talking about technologies, and people on their own are coming forward saying, I can help, I can do something. So we're seeing the progress occur. So that is the end of my talk. I'll be happy to answer any questions.